X-tec here. Welcome back to my continuing lessons of how to configure image BBS 3.0 for a new system. In this lesson we're going to look at some of the effects that took place from lesson 4. And then we're going to go into the configuration editor and look at the right side items, such as the miscellaneous features, the modem config, how to set the time, the system drives, look at a netmail config, and then we'll go into the base editors. So in this video I'm going to do things a little differently. I've got my recording set up in full screen mode, and on the screen you see TCP Ser over in the right hand corner. I've got image 3.0 running in WinVice R39099 in Super CPU mode, 20 megahertz with the CMD hard drive. And up here I've got CG term. It's configured for 80 columns, and the reason I'm doing it this way is so I can show some of the effects that were produced from what we did in lesson 4. So I've got CG term all ready to log on. I'm going to hit return, and here we go. I hit my backspace key. Yes, I'm in 80 column mode. I'm going to show you something that wasn't here before, but remember last time we set up the instant logon for the sysop. So I'm going to enter I for instant, and you notice it brings up my account. I'm going to enter 1, and it'll ask for my password. I'm going to enter the wrong password here just for a demonstration of what will happen. Now you notice it tells me that the login was invalid. So this time I'm just going to hit return, enter 1 for my account number, and correct password. So one thing I've noticed is that I've noticed is that things are a little slow on the receiving end. It's not because it is normally that way. Because normally if I log on using CG term on this computer, everything is very fast. But I'm sure that it's slowing it down because I'm recording this video. So we'll just have to bear with it for now. I'm sure that the reason why the response time is slow using this setup and recording at the same time is because of the processor on this machine is only a Core Duo, so it's probably using up all the processing power that this computer can deliver at this time. Okay, remember on the lesson 4 we set up a login menu, and that's what you see right now both on the BBS and in CG term. And we added 3 options: play anagrams, today in history, and board activity. Let's look at the board activity number 3. got this set up on your login menu, the users can select it to display the board activity. This board hasn't had any activity because it's just a demo board, so there's not much to show right here. Now, you might also remember that in lesson 4, we set up the Today in History auto maintenance program to run at midnight. So what that does is it creates the Today in History, and if I select item number 2, that's what will be displayed. You notice on CG term, which is set up in 80 columns, you get a full 80 column display, and of course on the terminal here on WinVice, the most you can see is 40 columns. So that's the difference between the displays. I'm going to select the play Anagrams just to see what happens. It'll ask me if I want to play Anagrams. I say yes. It tells me I have insufficient credits to play. You need at least 30. So I guess this account doesn't have enough credits to play the game. Not only that, but I think that there are no words already put into the anagram, which would prevent it from playing anyways. Alright, so let's quit out of this menu. The next thing the BBS does is a mail check. It tells me I have no mail. I'm going to go into ZZ mode. I'm going to look at check feedback, or view feedback. Feedback is where you can check to see if there was any feedback left to the stop, if there's any new users, if there were any telecheck errors, if anything came in from the error log, if there were any, and then you can also create canned messages that you can send to your users. Alright, another thing that we did in lesson 4 was we added the I/LO/AN, which is the auto new. Auto maintenance program, and what its purpose is to welcome any new users and create a news file. So let's go into the news files and see if there's any news files, and it says currently there are none. Well, the reason for that is because we haven't added that news file to the news menu yet. So I'm going to do a DR1. I'm going to look for n.star to see, and notice there is a news file. It's called n.$welcome. The $ in front of the file name will create a news file which is identified as a reminder. Now, a reminder news file will show up every time that a user logs onto the board, whether it's new since its last date of call or not. So notice I'm in the news menu mode. That's because I'm in ZZ mode, as identified by the check mark next to LOC. And then you also remember that in lesson 4 we created a forced login module to occur during login to display the news files. Well, since there were no news files to display, the BBS went right past that onto the next module. So for this demonstration, let's add the existing news file that is there. So I'm going to use the A to add, and I'm going to include the $ in the title, and call it welcome, exclamation point, access 1023, and now I have to load the file off of the drive, so I'm going to do dot load dot get, I'm sorry, and that was n dot $ welcome exclamation point, and device and drive is drive 1 because the news files are saved on the system file. And now you see that there's 2 lines of text in the editor in memory. So if I do a .m and do an MCI read, you see what it shows you right there. Now notice on the sysop screen, it shows up in 40 column mode, and on CG term it's in 80 column mode. So now I'm going to do a .save, and that'll save this as a news file. I can do a list, and that'll show me how many news files I have. If you just want to add a regular news file that is only visible to the user logging on since its last call date, if it's new since its last call date, here's how to add a normal news file. We're going to call the title new image 3.0 and access 1023, and we're going to make it say okay, so let's check to see what it says. Welcome to the new image 3.0, released to the public on 12/7/2020. Hope you like it. Feedback open. I'm going to save that file. And now if I do a list, you see that we have 2 news files. One of them has a $ in front of it, which will display as a reminder, and the other will only show up first time you see it since your last call. After that, it won't even show up in the news files anymore that get displayed during login. So we're done with the news files. So the whole purpose of this lesson is to display talk about the right side of the configuration editor. In lesson 4 we explained all of the left side functions, and during lesson either 1 or 2, depending on which one you watched, we've already gone through most of the right side functions, but let's just go through them one more time and I'll explain them a little bit further. I'm going to enter I for miscellaneous features. And we'll go line by line and explain what each one of these is for. Option A is the lieutenant kernel device. If you're not running on a lieutenant kernel, leave this as 0. But if you are running on a lieutenant kernel, make sure that you use option A and set the device number for the device number of your lieutenant kernel. Most likely it'll be device number 8. The auto weed cutoff. Now, the auto weed cutoff works with the weed mods. That's a separate disk, and those are optional programs that you can add at a later date after your BBS has been online for a while. But what it does is it stores a number in e.data, and it uses that number as the number of months to use for the auto weed cutoff. So I'm going to call that 24 months. Now that number gets saved in e.data, and it's going to be, if we were running the weed program for weeding users, it would weed out all the users who hadn't called back in 24 months. The next item is the default color. You know, the BBS comes with the default color set for Kion, but let's change it to a different color just for grins. We'll call it yellow, number 7. Alright, remember what I talked about when we were talking about the light bar? Let me activate the BBS and bring up the light bar function. Let's cursor over to FRD. Now, if I put a check mark on the left side of FRD, watch what happens. Okay. So the BBS changes to the default color, and so everything on the sysop screen is going to be the default color. Let's change it again to light gray. Let's say 10, light red. Waiting for the CG term to catch up. Didn't quite have the same effect that I was expecting. I was expecting all the colors to change to the color that I set, but maybe they have. Hang on, let's take a look. Quit out of that. Quit out of that. Okay, notice that everything is red now when you're at the main menu. If I were to enter the question mark and bring up the menu, notice on the sysop screen everything is red, light red. But on the user screen up here, it's still the MCI colors that are defined. So let's go back into IM. First of all, let's remove that check mark from FRD. And go back into the menu and the miscellaneous features. We'll change that default color back to, actually I prefer green. So I'm going to use green, number 3. Next item is the printer address. And what you're going to put in here is your printer secondary address. most of the time nobody's going to have a printer hooked up to their Commodore anymore, but if you do, and it's a Commodore graphics computer, normally the secondary address is going to be 7. And then item E defines whether or not your printer needs line feeds or not. You can change this to yes or no by entering the E. Send line feeds to the printer, and we'll say no. Now, password masks. The default password mask is just a plain old X, but Image will use a random set of password masks that you can use, and I'm going to put a number sign, an @ sign, and a % sign. So actually we've got 3 different password masks, and the BBS will choose which one to use at random when the user enters his password. Time zone, we went over that during setup, so we won't do that again. The main prompt, you can change that. Normally this is created during the initial setup procedure, but you can change it from this menu. We'll call this 3.0 main. And you'll see when we get back to the main prompt, that's what it'll display. You can change the BBS name from here with the command I. We'll call this my BBS. You can change the system ID. That can be any 2 letters. You can change the number of credits that the new user gets when he logs on. You can set that to any number. If you want to be generous, set it to 1,000 credits or 500 credits. Whatever you decide that the new user should get. Most people don't define everything on their board to be able to use credits anymore, but some things do. And then it's also an incentive for them to post in the subboards for which they get credits every time they post, depending on the number of words that they enter. And they also get credits in the download section whenever they upload a program. Item L is an option where you can set prime time. Our boards nowadays, we don't get very many calls, but back in the day when we were getting 30 or 40 calls a day, especially during the evening hours, we used to set limits for the amount of time that a person could be online so that the board was more shareable among other users. So that option still remains. We can set the number of minutes, say 30 minutes. We can set the start time to be, let's say, 8 p.m. and the end time, number 3, to be 10 p.m. And then just hit return and hit return again. And now notice for prime time it shows you 30, 20, 22. So that's military time. 30 minutes starting at 8 o'clock p.m. and ending at 10 o'clock p.m. Now item M allows you to change your chat messages. You can change the entry message to anything you want, or just hit return to keep it the same. Change the exit message to anything you want, or hit return to keep it the same, and then hit return to exit out of it. So that's everything for the miscellaneous features. I'm going to quit out of this menu, and we'll look at the modem config. We've already configured the modem during the first during one of the first two lessons. But we'll look at it once again. You notice that it shows the configuration settings for the modem, and you can come to this menu and change it in case you have some differences or you want to change anything, like changing from escape code hangup to DTR, or changing the baud rate, or whatever you want to do. All you have to do is, let's say we want to change the baud rate, enter 1, and let's set it for 19.2, and notice that's what it shows up in the menu up there. So we'll change it back to 38.4 and exit from this menu. Now, since I really didn't change anything, I'm just going to say no to update modem flags. On the right side of the configuration editor, you can also use option K to set the correct time. It comes up, first asks you for the day. This is Monday, so the day is 2. The month is December 12. The day is 14. The year is 2020. The hour right now is 9. So I'm going to enter 09. And the minute, according to my display on my PC, it's actually 28, not 19 a.m. And is that okay? Yes. Okay, you notice at the bottom of the screen the time updated to 9:28. Option L is the system drives. You should know by now that Image BBS uses 6 image drives. They call these the system drives, and they're numbered 1 through 6. So system disk 1 shows you the location. It's on device 8, partition 2. The email disk is on device 8, partition 3, and so on. Now, a lot of times when you enter commands, you don't, like, let's say you wanted to do a directory of the etc. disk. Instead of entering DR 8,2, you could actually enter DR3. That would bring up, that's the same thing as entering 8,2. Just thought I'd explain that. The next item is netmail config. If I go to M, it'll bring up a submenu. Now this board has not joined the network yet. I'll include that as a later lesson, as a video for a later lesson. But if I were to select any of these options, like local info, it would say node not configured and bring me back to the menu. So let's exit out of that. And the last item on the list is the base editors. We're going to select N to go to the base editors, and you notice it brings up a whole new menu of options. Today we're just going to preview this menu for this lesson, and the next lesson we'll talk about what's available in the base editor programs.